You think strength is just in fists and footwork. You think the loudest man is the most powerful. Then you've never met a fighter who bows his head before he throws a punch. You've never seen what true discipline looks like when it's guided by faith, not fame. Because some warriors don't just train their bodies, they train their souls, and when they step into battle, they carry more than gloves. They carry a code. I had this conversation recently with a fighter. Not just a fighter in the ring, but a fighter in life, disciplined, grounded, unshakable. You look into their eyes and realize they're playing by a code, not the kind you read in a textbook, not the kind the world talks about. I'm talking about something deeper, ancient, rooted, something that feels like it's been forged through fire and faith. You ever wonder why some of these Muslim fighters, these warriors, you see them so calm before a storm? Why they're so composed while the whole world is screaming chaos? It's not an act, it's not arrogance, it's a kind of power that doesn't come from ego, it comes from surrender, surrender, not to an opponent, but to something higher. Something beyond them, beyond us. There's this code, this way of life, that governs every breath they take. It's not just about training the body, it's about training the soul. It's about waking up before sunrise, bowing down in prayer while most of the world is still scrolling through their phones. It's about fasting not to cut weight, but to sharpen the spirit, to remind themselves that they're not slaves to desire, not slaves to the world, not slaves to anything but their Creator and man. That changes how you fight. That changes how you live when you believe that pain has a purpose. You stop running from it. When you believe that victory comes from God, not just from your hands. You stop fearing failure. When your heart is anchored in something eternal, the noise of the crowd doesn't shake you. The hate doesn't break you. The fame doesn't blind you. There's a reason why these guys walk into the cage like they're walking into prayer, why they bleed with honor, why they fight with intention. They're not there just to win. They're there to represent something, something clean, something ancient, something sacred, and I think a lot of people miss that. They just see the wins, the highlight reels, but they don't see the spiritual armor these guys are wearing. They don't see the years of self-discipline, the way they guard their eyes, their tongues, their hearts. That's the code, that's the secret. It's not magic, it's mastery, mastery of the self. That kind of power it's not taught in a gym. It's built in silence, in sujud, in hunger, in gratitude, in choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. Again and again, you talk to these guys and you feel it, not just strength, but clarity, like they know exactly who they are and why they're here. And that kind of clarity, that kind of peace in the middle of war, that's not normal, that's next level. That's what stunned me. You ever sit down and talk to someone who completely shatters your assumptions? Someone who makes you realize that everything you thought you knew about strength, about discipline, about control, was just scratching the surface. I had this encounter with a fighter, someone who didn't just carry muscle and skill, but something much heavier, something sacred. And it wasn't about bravado. It wasn't about how hard they could punch or how fast they could move. It was about presence, calm, the kind of calm that doesn't come from arrogance, but from alignment. That deep, centered energy that you feel from someone who's not just fighting to win, but fighting to represent. And you realize there's something different here, something real, these Muslim fighters. They're moving by a different rhythm, living by a different standard. It's not performative, it's not for show, it's rooted, it's ancient. You see it in the way they prepare, in the way they carry themselves, in the way they enter a fight like they're walking into something sacred. It's not about hype. It's about responsibility. They live by this internal code, something spiritual, something disciplined, something that feels like it's been refined over centuries. This code is not something you can fake. It's not something you pick up from watching YouTube highlights or motivational clips. It's something lived, something that shapes every part of them. When you fast not to cut weight, but to discipline the soul, when you train not just to compete, but to get closer to your purpose, when you pray 5 times a day, bowing down to something higher than yourself, it rewires you. You stop being a slave to impulse. You stop living for the moment. You start living with depth, with vision, with intention. These guys are not just athletes. They're warriors in the deepest sense. Their war isn't just with opponents. It's with themselves. And that's what blew my mind. The real fight isn't in the cage, it's in the heart, it's in the soul, it's in the moments when no one's watching, and they still choose discipline, still choose purity, still choose the harder path because it's the right one. They don't chase fame, they don't feed off attention, they're not looking to be liked, they're looking to be aligned, aligned with their Creator, aligned with their purpose. And that gives them a kind of power that you can't measure in knockouts or trophies. It's a power that shows up in their eyes, in their silence, in the way they walk away from things the world celebrates, just because it doesn't align with their values. That kind of strength, it's rare, and it doesn't come from just physical training. It comes from training the soul, training the ego, fighting desires, choosing peace when anger feels justified, choosing patience when pride wants to explode, and doing all of it not for applause, but for something far greater. And the deeper you look, the more you realize they are not afraid, not of loss, not of pain, not of death. Because when you believe that everything is in the hands of God, you fight different. You walk different, you live different, you don't need to control every outcome because you trust the process. You trust the plan and that kind of faith. It's like armor. You can't break a man who believes his soul is protected. You can't intimidate someone who prays before he fights and thanks God after, no matter the result, because he wasn't fighting for the belt. He was fighting for something much bigger, something you can't hang on a wall, something you carry inside you. There's something raw and almost otherworldly about watching a fighter who's deeply rooted in faith step into the cage. You feel it before the fight even begins. It's not just in the way they walk or the way they breathe. It's in the energy they carry. They don't look like they're stepping into chaos. They look like they're stepping into order, into purpose. There's this strange calmness, almost like they're having a conversation with something bigger than all of us. It's not performance, it's not hype, it's reverence. A sacred kind of stillness that doesn't come from confidence in their own abilities, but from absolute trust in something beyond themselves. You start realizing that while everyone else is training their muscles, these guys are training their souls. While others are obsessed with physical strength, they've tapped into something far deeper, spiritual strength. A kind of internal gravity that keeps them grounded no matter how loud the world gets. That's the secret people overlook. They assume the edge comes from harder workouts, stricter diets, longer hours. But these men are working on another plane. They're building mental toughness through prayer, emotional control through fasting, spiritual alignment through discipline. You watch them fast during the day and train at night, and you wonder where the fuel comes from. But that's the thing, it doesn't come from this world. It comes from conviction, from belief, from the unshakable understanding that the body is just a tool, but the soul is the driver. When you feed the soul, the body follows. When your heart is clear, your fists carry a different kind of force. It's wild to think that the very things the world runs away from, silence, struggle, sacrifice, these fighters run toward. They lean into discomfort because they've learned that comfort breeds weakness. They welcome hardship because they know it purifies. They embrace limits because limits teach humility, and that humility, it's not fake or forced, it's real, because they don't see themselves as the source of their success. They see themselves as vessels, tools, carriers of something bigger. They win and they thank God. They lose and they still thank God, because the outcome isn't the point. The obedience is. The submission is. That's what transforms them from just athletes to warriors, and when they speak, it hits different. It's not loud, it's not boastful, it's composed, precise, grounded in something deeper than ambition. They talk about purpose, about responsibility, about carrying the name of something sacred into battle. They talk about not just representing themselves, but their people, their beliefs, their Creator. That level of consciousness, that awareness, it sharpens everything, their reactions, their discipline, their choices. They're not fighting to hurt, they're fighting to elevate, to embody, to live out a code that most people have never even heard of. And that code, it's not just about what you do in public. It's about who you are in private. It's how you treat your mother, how you speak when no one's listening, how you carry yourself when the cameras are off. This secret code isn't something you can fake your way into. It demands everything, your thoughts, your actions, your intentions. It shapes how you fight, how you eat, how you pray, how you love. It's not just a rule book. It's a lifestyle, a filter through which every choice gets run. Is this action pleasing to God? Is this word in line with my purpose? Is this fight bigger than my ego? And when those questions guide your life, you become a different kind of human, one that doesn't flinch under pressure, one that doesn't collapse under hate, one that can take pain and still stand tall because the pain isn't the enemy. It's part of the purification, part of the path, part of what makes you worthy of carrying the name you fight. For most people think fighting is about aggression, about rage, about dominating your opponent by any means necessary. But when you watch these Muslim fighters, you start to realize that the real battle isn't even in the cage. It's not the opponent across from them, it's the one within. There's a silence in their presence that speaks louder than any trash talk. A steadiness in their movement that tells you they're not here just to fight, they're here to demonstrate something deeper, something sacred. You watch them enter the arena, and there's no fear, no panic, no ego leading the way. There's focus, there's surrender, not to the crowd, not to their coaches, but to the one who controls the outcome. That's what makes them different. They don't see the cage as a battleground. They see it as a platform to display their code, their values, their discipline. They're not hunting glory. They're not addicted to the spotlight. In fact, they're often running from it, because their strength doesn't come from being seen. It comes from being hidden, from the hours spent alone in the gym, in prayer, in reflection. The world sees the performance, but it doesn't see the preparation. The preparation isn't just physical, it's spiritual. It's built in the early morning hours when the rest of the world is asleep, and they're up connecting with something higher. It's built when they lower their gaze, when they guard their tongue, when they choose silence over argument. That internal training, that's what produces the external power. It's not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about having the quietest ego in the fight, and it's wild, because the more you study them, the more you realize they're not driven by the same things most people are. They're not chasing likes or fame or money. They're chasing legacy, not the kind written in headlines, but the kind written on the soul. They want to leave behind more than trophies. They want to leave behind an example. A message, proof that you can live clean, stay true, and still be dangerous in all the right ways. They believe in honor, in mercy, in justice. These aren't just words to them. They're principles, and they carry them into battle like armor. That's what makes them untouchable in a different way. It's not just their footwork or their cardio or their chin. It's their purpose. You can't break someone who knows why they're here. You can't intimidate someone who fears only God. You can't distract someone who's not seduced by the world. That's the secret ingredient that no coach can teach, no supplement can deliver. It's conviction. It's knowing that even your failures are part of a bigger plan, that even pain has value. That every drop of sweat, every bruise, every setback is part of a divine script written just for you, so when they don't fight for attention. They fight with intention. Every punch, every kick, every move is guided by a sense of responsibility. To themselves, to their family, to their faith, and that responsibility, it keeps them sharp, it keeps them from cutting corners, it keeps them accountable when no one's watching. That's why their confidence isn't loud. It's rooted. It's not built on wins. It's built on obedience, on walking the path even when it's hard, on showing restraint when anger tempts them, on standing firm when doubt creeps in, and when they win, it's not about celebrating themselves. It's about expressing gratitude because they know the victory wasn't from them. It was through them, and when they lose, they don't spiral, they don't crumble, because their worth was never tied to the outcome in the first place. It was tied to the process, the struggle, the fight itself. There's a level of discipline that goes beyond physical conditioning. A type of control that you don't just learn in the gym. It's built in how you live every day. And that's what you start to see when you look closely at these Muslim fighters. You realize the fight didn't start when the bell rang, and it doesn't end when their hand is raised. The real fight is constant. It's in the morning when they wake up for prayer while the world sleeps. It's in the evening when they push aside distractions to study, to reflect, to keep their mind sharp and their heart clean. Every choice they make, every step they take is weighed, intentional, deliberate. They're not reacting to life, they're shaping it. They're building themselves not just as fighters, but as men of purpose. And that makes their strength feel different. It's not just about muscle or technique, it's about alignment. They don't look for shortcuts because shortcuts take you off the path. And for them, the path is everything. That path is laced with prayer, with fasting, with sacrifice. But it's also filled with peace, a kind of deep inner peace that shows up when the lights are the brightest and the pressure is the heaviest. You can't fake that. You can't fake calm when chaos is all around you unless you've trained for it. Unless you've practiced being still while the world moves fast. That's what gives them the edge. That's why they walk into battle with composure, because they've already faced the war inside. The one that asks, do you really believe what you say you believe? The one that tests your patience, your ego, your pride. And if you've conquered that war, the one outside becomes manageable. It's wild to realize how much strength is hidden in restraint. To be able to hurt someone and choose not to. To have the words to tear someone down and choose silence instead. To win and still remain humble, that's real power. That's not taught in most places. That's taught through faith, through submission. Through being tested again and again and coming back stronger, not because you avoided pain, but because you faced it head on and still chose the high road. That's why these fighters aren't just respected, they are admired, because they show us a version of strength that's wrapped in humility, a kind of control that comes from knowing who you are and who you serve. When they step into the cage, they're not there to entertain. They're there to represent. Every move they make is a reflection of their values. They're not fueled by rage or revenge. They're driven by principle. They've learned to detach from the outcome because they trust in the process. And when you trust in the process, the pressure doesn't break you. It refines you. It makes you sharper, more aware, more focused. That's why when they fight, there's no panic, just purpose. Every jab, every slip, every moment is calculated. Not because they want to win at all costs, but because they don't want to dishonor what they stand for. They've learned that life isn't about what you get, but who you become, and becoming someone of value, someone of discipline, character, and integrity. That takes more than talent. It takes intention. It takes commitment to something greater than yourself. That's the code they live by, a code that says your worth isn't in your wins, but in your worship. That the goal isn't to impress the world, but to fulfill your responsibility. And that responsibility includes how you treat your opponent, how you speak, how you walk away from victory, and how you carry yourself after defeat. Because every moment is a test, and every test is a chance to show what's really inside you. The body can be trained anywhere, but the soul, that takes work most people aren't willing to do, and that's the difference. That's what sets them apart. In a world that rewards noise, they move in silence. In a culture obsessed with self, they surrender to something higher. They don't just fight to win. They fight to honor, to uphold a code that demands strength, but also mercy, power, but also patience. Victory, but never at the cost of their soul, and when the fight is over, whether their hand is raised or not, they walk away with peace, because they know the real victory was already won long before they stepped into the cage. It was won in discipline, in devotion, in choosing the path of truth when no one was watching. That's not just what makes them champions, that's what makes them different.